Is LA Knight a ripoff of The Rock? And what's next for him following Money in the Bank? Let's talk about that in today's Wrestling Ramble. LA Knight has been getting louder and louder reactions week after week. Every time he comes to the ring, the crowd erupts. They love this guy. Despite him being portrayed as a heel, he gets one of the biggest babyface reactions in all of WWE. He's right up there with all the big stars. Roman Reigns obviously gets a huge reaction for the character he portrays as the tribal chief, but more than anything, I think that has to do with the amazing bloodline angle that's been going on. So you can clump the Usos in there with them. Sami Zayn was very over during the bloodline angle. He still gets a good reception. Whenever Kevin Owens comes out, he gets a decent pop. Then Sami Zayn comes out, he gets an even bigger one. They'll probably do something there with the two of them, especially since they're playing into it with the separate entrances and having Kevin Owens go first and Sami Zayn go after, with the discrepancy in crowd reactions. Cody Rhodes, of course, probably the biggest babyface in the company right now, and LA Knight is arguably just a notch or so below that. He's right there, and he could be on that level if he was put, let's say, into a program with the likes of Roman Reigns. That would be the best way to build LA Knight, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon. It looks like they've got the bloodline storyline taken care of for the next few months, and more than likely we will see Cody Rhodes challenge Roman Reigns again at WrestleMania next year. So where does that leave LA Knight? Well, we'll get into that in a bit, because there's been a bit of controversy surrounding LA Knight. Now, he's done a few interviews with Chris Van Vliet where it's been pointed out that he sounds like The Rock. And LA Knight was the one that brought it up. He did a show with The Rock. It was called The Hero. And this is early in his professional wrestling career when he did this. Of course, LA Knight has done a ton of commercials and voiceover work. You can check all that out online. But LA Knight was recalling that whenever they would be listening in the production room to the voices from the show, The Rock would talk and they would think it was LA Knight, or vice versa. So that's where they first found out that they sound alike. And they definitely do have a similar tone, just speaking tone. But the biggest thing that people are saying is that LA Knight is a lot like The Rock and Steve Austin, in the way he moves, in the way he talks, with his charisma, his cadence. And the biggest person calling this out right now is Kevin Nash. And I don't just mean by physical stature, I mean stature in the pro wrestling industry. Everybody knows Kevin Nash. So earlier this month, Kevin Nash on his Click This podcast said this about LA Knight's segment with Logan Paul on Raw prior to Money in the Bank. Nash said, "Am I the only one that sees like an absolute ripoff of The Rock to the point when he cut the promo on Logan Paul or whatever his name is, the only thing he didn't do is turn the MFer sideways? Does everybody have amnesia? There's nothing original." He then doubled down on it, quickly saying, "I'm not going to apologize. I think it's a blatant ripoff, but I didn't mean any harm." He would go on to address the controversy further, noting that there's so many people that agree that LA Knight is doing the Rock Austin thing. I mean, the guy's been in the business for like 10 years. I mean, why didn't he get over anywhere else? I've always said that if you're not over in 3 years, it's just not probably going to happen. I would go down to NXT and I'd ask a guy, "How long have you been here?" He would be like, 4 years, 5 years. This was before NXT had its own show. These guys were in developmental for 3, 4 years, 5 years. I've never seen the guy work, and I just said what I said. But then when I thought about it after the show was over, anytime you bash one of the boys, I don't know him, but he's still one of the boys. I thought, well, the worst case scenario is that somebody will say I bashed him, and then if he's over, then the people will be like, we like him anyway, and they'll push him harder. Like, well, we'll show you, and the people will get with him more. From what I can tell, that's the extent of Nash's comments on the situation. One thing I will say regarding the last portion of the comment that he made most recently was the idea that if he criticizes LA Knight, then people will get behind him more. That's a bit of a ridiculous notion to me. There's not going to be people in the arena that go, "Oh, hey, LA Knight's music's playing. Kevin Nash made fun of him, so let's cheer for him more. Oh, hey, Nash called him a ripoff. Here we go, get ready. His music's about to hit." It's not going to happen. Maybe online, people will take shots at Nash a bit more and defend LA Knight because of this, but that's not going to increase his popularity whatsoever. That has nothing to do with it. I don't know if he meant it a different way or what, but I thought that last comment was a little bit ridiculous. Now, I do believe that LA Knight is inspired by The Rock, and who wouldn't be? If you're a pro wrestling fan, to some degree, you are probably inspired by The Rock and Steve Austin. Let's just be honest. Do you hear people call out Hulk Hogan as a superstar Billy Graham ripoff? You never hear about that. Sometimes you do, but they don't fault him for it. Superstar Billy Graham was viewed as someone that was ahead of his time, that could cut promos in a way that no one had done before, that came into the business with very tall frame. I believe at the time he was like 6'3", and he had an incredible physique, came from a bodybuilding background, and he could talk on the mic. That was something that was unheard of and unseen. And then the flamboyant colors, the tie-dye, that was something that Hulk Hogan took from, Jesse Ventura took from. The list goes on and on, from people that were influenced and wanted to be like superstar Billy Graham. That's not a bad thing. Superstar Billy Graham was the original superstar. If someone says you're ahead of the times, that just means you're innovative. You've done something that no one else is doing currently. You were the inventor or innovator. You brought something new to the table. And that's why everyone looked to Superstar and took from it. They took the good from Superstar and molded it and made it their own. And there's nothing wrong with that. So if LA Knight takes a little bit from The Rock, a little bit from Austin, two WWE stars that are legends, that got massively over more than anybody in the business, what's wrong with that? I don't see a problem with it, and I don't think it's so much of a blatant ripoff as much as it is paying a little bit of homage to The Rock. More so The Rock than Steve Austin. I don't too much see Austin in LA Knight, maybe in the movements and the way he carries himself, but in the cadence, the way he talks, especially how he sounds just in a normal speaking voice, he definitely sounds like The Rock. Outside of that, he's his own man. He's his own character, his own gimmick, and in this day and age, you have all these high-flying wrestlers. Just doing the moves isn't going to make you stand out. Doing a tope suicida is not going to help the fans' perception of you to go, oh, this is a guy I need to tune into. We have big guys doing tope suicidas. We have small guys. We have every guy and every girl doing tope suicidas or doing a 450 splash or doing springboard moves. The high-flying stuff just isn't going to cut it. And there's already plenty of technicians, in-ring technicians, mat-based wrestlers. There's people that do that too, but there's not enough personalities. LA Knight is good in the ring, but where he shines and the reason he is so popular and in demand from the fans is because of his presence, his charisma, his promo ability, all of that. That is what makes him a star and someone to look out for, and that's why the fans have attached to him, because they don't see anyone else out there doing what LA Knight is doing. There's nobody like him today, at least that I can think of off the top of my head. Sharing a similar sentiment, Conan responded to Kevin Nash accusing LA Knight of being a ripoff of The Rock. He said on Keeping It 100, we had LA Knight on the show and I asked him about that. I said, hey, your cadence is a lot like The Rock's. And he goes, yeah, I know. He's not denying it, right? He's paying homage to the greatest to have ever done it on the mic, which I get. First time I saw him in Impact, I said this guy is kind of a ripoff of The Rock. That is the first thing that I thought when I saw him. But then I kept seeing him. The Rock never said yeah or dummy. He's inspired by The Rock, who hasn't been in wrestling on a consistent basis for 25 years. What's the big deal? I see nothing wrong with what he's doing. And I think that's important as well. I feel like most people have a similar reaction where on the surface, he seems like The Rock. But then you scratch the surface a little bit and you see there's a lot more to him and he's his own man. Let me know what you think about Kevin Nash accusing LA Knight of being a ripoff of The Rock. I definitely think there's similarities in LA Knight and The Rock. I definitely think LA Knight is paying homage and is inspired by The Rock, but I don't see it as a blatant ripoff. Moving on, what are LA Knight's chances of becoming a world champion in WWE? The most concerning thing that I read, which I've touched on this previously, was following Money in the Bank, Dave Meltzer would explain why they didn't book LA Knight to win the ladder match, saying on Wrestling Observer Radio, fans think that they're never getting it, but that isn't the case here. It's like if we give him the briefcase, then he's getting a title shot. But when are we putting the title on him? And the answer is never. It's probably not a good thing to give it to him. While it was reported by Ringside News that everyone in WWE is aware that LA Knight is popular, it just remains to be seen if they do anything with it. When it comes to him losing Money in the Bank, I think it makes sense because LA Knight doesn't need Money in the Bank. Damian Priest would be better suited for it because he's not as over as LA Knight and it can play into the turmoil with the Judgment Day. And that might be the same approach they take to putting a world title on him. they might view it the same exact way, thinking, well, you're already over. Not only do we not need to push you and try to elevate you with a storyline since you're already over, we, with that logic, don't need to put the title on you. We would rather put the title on someone and make a champion out of them. You're already main event caliber in terms of the reactions you get. We don't need to convince the fans that you could be a main eventer, that you could be a world title challenger. You already get the reaction of a main eventer and a world title challenger. So why would we put the title on you? Which is a little bit frustrating to consider. At the same time, I can completely understand it. Not that I don't want to see LA Knight as champion. I would love nothing more than that. I think LA Knight has worked hard over his career, as everyone else has, but just the reactions he gets and how they increasingly get louder and louder and louder, it just feels like you have to do something with him. You have to give him something. Now, they've teased him possibly going after the US title. He had a little live event scuffle with Theory and picked up his belt. There's been talk of a potential character change, which I don't know why they would do that, but we'll just have to see. What do you think? Do you think LA Knight is a future world champion in WWE? With there being multiple world titles once again on the main roster, it's even more likely, but who knows? Let me know what you guys think about that. That's all I've got. I'll see y'all later.